Well, boys, what do we talk about today? It seems there's so much shit going on that I haven't covered yet. I don't even know where to start. Digital pre-orders? The cesspool that is the mobile gaming industry as a whole? Fucking loot boxes? And then there's one more thing. Day 1 DLC. How about that? Let's have a civilized fucking talk about that, shall we? DLC. Downloadable content. So when it comes to DLC, I think we should group it into two different categories. On the one hand, you have cosmetic DLC. Stuff that doesn't objectively impact the game and that doesn't require people that could work on making the game better during the development cycle. You know, skins and the like. And on the other hand, you have actual content that objectively impacts the game. Stuff like additional quests, new game mechanics, entirely new areas and characters. Content that requires people that could be working on another part of the game and actually improve it in an objective way. Let's tackle the easy one first. Non-cosmetic DLC. The people involved in this kind of content creation are basically working on the game until the very end. So there is no reason to ever have them working on stuff that the consumer doesn't get upon release. So if you're a developer or a development studio that spends time and resources during the development cycle of the game pre-release in creating additional content that upon release you hide behind a second paywall, then you can go and, fuck yourself. Fuck yourself and jump down a well, why don't you? Because those are time and resources that could have been and should have been spent on improving the base game that the customer gets upon release. As far as I'm concerned, there is never, not ever, a reason that should be acceptable. Having a developer pre-release work on content that will not actually be released with the base game is not fucking okay. You want to make DLC? Fine. I love DLC. Of course I want more content for my favorite games. So go ahead and make DLC after you've released the game. If the product is not released yet, those man-hours should have been used to improve upon it. I mean, it's just so fucking ridiculous. We have games like BioShock 2 that literally have non-cosmetic DLC on the fucking disc. But you can't have it unless you pay extra upon release. Or other games like, and I hate to shit on this, Dragon Age 2. I love the Dragon Age series, but the Exiled Prince DLC was fucking bullshit. Because it was bundled as a pre-order. That's the other thing, right? Either they're doing Day 1 DLC that you're supposed to buy upon the game's release because for some reason, well, fucking money again, they didn't put it into the base game, or they want you to pay them fucking money before the game's even out and anybody knows if it's any good by pre-ordering it. Which makes no fucking sense for digital releases. If you want to do DLC correctly, just look at something like Witcher 3, Blood and Wine. That fucking expansion is better than a lot of standalone games these days. That's how you do DLC. After release, and you deliver a full fucking package that is good on its own. One argument that I have heard for non-cosmetic Day 1 DLC is, especially in regards to consoles, the certification process. During that time, you can't really add anything. But while the game goes through that process, and we find out if it'll be released on our favorite consoles, you shouldn't be working on Day 1 DLC. You should be working on a Day 1 patch. I'm not one to scoff at Day 1 patches. I'm not like, oh, the game just came out and they already have to patch it. No, I'm like, oh, they already fixed errors and glitches that didn't make it into the final release. Fucking awesome. Yes, please give me the Day 1 patch. I'll gladly take it. So even if during certification you can't work directly on the product, then the manpower shouldn't be wasted on creating content that you can sell extra upon release. That manpower should be used to improve the game, make it better for the customer upon release. You wanna know what Day 1 DLC is? Day 1 DLC is you handing the developer money them giving you the game in exchange, and while that's happening, they're spitting in your fucking face. That's what Day 1 DLC is. Actually, scratch that. It's not like spitting in your face, it's like kicking you in the fucking nuts. And now comes the trickier part. Cosmetic DLC. It just so happens that the people involved in creating cosmetic content, let's just call it the design team or the art department to make things easier from here on out, the art department is usually not doing much during the end of the development cycle. You can't just repurpose an artist to suddenly do quality assurance for you. Or God forbid, implement code. I mean, yeah, you could theoretically have an artist be a beta tester for you or do some monkey testing, but that's just gonna lead to a lot of problems within the company. Because that's not what the artist signed up for, and depending on whether QA or designers are paid more handsomely, one of the groups is gonna be upset if another person gets paid more to do basically the same job. So for all intents and purposes, you can't repurpose an artist to suddenly do development or QA for you. And that means, in reality, they would probably be pulled off the project to work on something else that still needs designers. Or as it so happens, they stay in the current project, but what they're doing is create cosmetic DLC. And so it's kind of hard to argue this point, because their work doesn't objectively impact the game. Cosmetics are a very subjective topic, and a lot of people don't care about them at all, or for some, the additional skins will even be worse than the original ones. And when the truth of the matter is that if they wouldn't be making DLC, they wouldn't be working on that game anymore anyways, then it's kinda hard to say we deserve that DLC for free. I think in this regard, it's more emotionally driven. As a consumer, I just don't like the feeling of buying a product and knowing that additional content is there, and I paid full price, but the developer says you still can't have it unless you pay extra. So honestly, when it comes to that, I just feel it would show a lot of goodwill towards the consumer from the company's side if they were to add this cosmetic DLC for free. And the other problem I see with having paid Day 1 cosmetic DLC is I think it sends us down a slippery slope. Because if we as the consumer are absolutely fine with cosmetic Day 1 DLC that is paid for, then what is to stop companies from just putting in half the amount of visual upgrades that they would have done and just sell the rest as DLC? And sure, in games like, for example, Persona 4 or Trails of Cold Steel, it doesn't matter that much if our protagonists or our heroes have extra costumes for free. But now imagine a game where cosmetics are actually important. Imagine something like Need for Speed, where upgrading your car visually is a huge part of the game. And now, cut the customization options in half, or strip them down to the bare minimum. This is something that could very well happen, the bare minimum being in the base game and the rest being sold as DLC. Of course, this is just a hypothetical, for now. Just think back to when microtransactions started showing up in single-player games, when we suddenly got loot boxes in the first few games. And if we as the consumer don't push back against that, it becomes common practice. Look at the state of the gaming industry. Almost every fucking game nowadays gets riddled with fucking loot boxes and microtransactions and anti-consumer bullshit of that kind. And being fine with Day 1 DLC is exactly the same case. It paves the way for this sort of bullshit to show up in every game. And that is the main reason why even cosmetic DLC on Day 1, in my opinion, should not be accepted. The consumer has to fight back. We have to voice our displeasure with these sorts of things. Because if we just shut up and take it, it's only gonna get worse. So to sum it all up, non-cosmetic Day 1 DLC is absolutely unacceptable. There is never a reason for that to be okay. If you're doing that, go fuck yourself. Cosmetic Day 1 DLC is a little harder to argue, but as a consumer, I just don't like that feeling of incompleteness. And that's really what it is, because I'm buying a game and I know that content is already there upon release, but I just can't have it. That's not a nice feeling to have as a consumer. So I think the company adding that cosmetic DLC pre-release for free would show a lot of consumer goodwill. And secondly, being okay with day one DLC that is paid for opens the gates for some potentially very shady anti-consumer business strategies, and that's why I think that we, as the consumer, have to make it clear from the get-go that this is absolutely unacceptable. So as far as I'm concerned, paid day one DLC should never happen. Day one patches? Yes please, I'll gladly take them, thank you very much. Well boys, there you go. Those are my thoughts on day one DLC. Let me know what you think about it, especially in regards to Cosmetic DLC. I'd be very interested to hear your opinions. And as always, this is Evolutionz signing out, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.